Hi everyone, Michael Edwards here again, Northern Affinity. I think it's probably fair to say for a lot of businesses when you start or when you're even in the first few years, your intellectual property might not always be the first thing on your mind when you come into setting up your business and moving forward. But we're gonna discuss it today and why it probably should be, or one of the big things you talk about. So I'm here with Matt Sammon from Sonder IP. I'll let Matt introduce himself in a second. Just to say that obviously if there's people on Facebook or LinkedIn watching us live, you can put comments or ask us questions. I'm sure Matt will be happy to answer as we go through. Yeah, please do put them in and we'll go through. And again, if anyone's watching back afterwards, if you want to put comments in any of the posts, please do, and I'm sure Matt will be happy to answer them in future as well. So I've obviously mentioned in the name a couple of times. I'll pass you over to Matt if you're okay to introduce yourself, Matt, and tell us who you are, what you do, and then we'll kind of have a bit of a chat about all things IP.
Yeah. Okay, morning everyone. As Mike's mentioned, my name is Matt Sammon from Sonder IP, and we're intellectual property attorneys specialising in brand protection and strategy. So primarily, for businesses, we're looking at protecting their intellectual property, so their trademarks, registered designs, copyright, helping them get registrations in place, and then also monitoring and enforcing their intellectual property. But we also do a lot of work working with strategy, so working with businesses to help them put in place processes for identifying the IP that they create, have processes in place for protecting it, and also looking at the value as to where they should be spending budget to protect, and really sort of focusing their business so it's IP healthy as far as it can be.
Okay, perfect, Matt. No, I think kind of the whole IP thing. I think it's fair to say for most of us, it's not something we know too much about. There's lots of other subjects when you're running a business that you might not be an expert in it, but you know a little bit about it. This is an area maybe that's one of the things we don't know too much about. So it'd be interesting if you could kind of give us some examples of where people, things that have gone wrong for people to start with, where they've not protected their IP, they've not done the things that they needed to do, and kind of what the consequences of that. Now, I appreciate you can't give us any particular names and things like that, but just maybe a few examples would be great to kind of bring it to life.
Yeah, I think you're right when you say it's something a lot of businesses know they need to do something with, but they don't necessarily make it a priority at the outset, which is understandable, but that's primarily what leads to the main issues. The main issues we find are primarily over the name of the business itself, the trademark or product names, where they've been launched into the market without enough due diligence. So they've not checked whether anyone else has the brand name registered, anyone's using something confusingly similar. And then that's where they run into problems. And often it's not immediate, because owners of prior rights will often pick up use of a brand name once it gets to a certain size and it gets more public. So we do get issues where businesses have been set up, they've been running for 12, 18 months, they're starting to build up their reputation, build up their customer base, and then they find themselves in a position whereby they're receiving a letter before action telling them they can no longer use this name because someone else has the prior rights and they need to change it. So the worst case scenario, if you are guilty of a trademark infringement, is that an injunction can be granted to force you to change the name. And that can be immediate. You can also pay damages or an account of profits for all the use you've made of that name to date, and you can end up with a bill for the other side's legal costs. So it can be very serious. Now more often than not, that worst case scenario doesn't happen. If you are in a position where you've infringed someone else's trademark, the majority of cases it is accidental, and it's a case of not doing the due diligence. When we're representing people in that position, often we can agree something that's a lot less onerous on you than completely changing. So it might be agreeing to steer clear of certain aspects of a third party's business. It might ultimately have to be a name change, but we could negotiate time to develop a new name, notify your customers. So rather than an immediate ceasing of use of the name, it can be phased over 3 or 6 months. And certainly in terms of paying damages, we look to avoid that wherever possible. So that kind of highlights the importance of, yes, we appreciate it's not always the first priority, but actually timing is particularly important with IP. So before you're launching new names, new products, it is best to conduct that due diligence, get the clearance in place. It's all about security for your own business. With intellectual property, a lot of people think counterfeits and fake products and things like that. But actually, one of the biggest benefits of it is just security for your own business, so that you know that you are able to carry on trading, doing what you're good at, doing what you're doing, building up your business. It's safe in the knowledge that the brand name that you're generating goodwill for is safe and secure, and that you're going to be able to carry on using that going forward.
Well, absolutely, that makes a lot of sense. So if there's anyone watching this who does run their own business and have not really thought about this, kind of where do they start? What things can they do to look at what they need to do to protect themselves in the future?
So there is a certain amount of searching and due diligence you can do yourself. If you're at the early stage of starting up your brand, obviously you should be Googling it. It's as simple as that. If you see other people with similar names, the chances are you don't want to use a similar name. So that's a good starting point. You can conduct some limited searches on the UK Intellectual Property Office website of registered trademarks. You can also do it on the European Union Intellectual Property Office. Domain name searching is also fairly simple. So you can do some simple searches like that, but really at that point, then you want to be taking some advice, because when we register a trademark, we register it for particular goods and services. So there might be someone using an identical trademark to you, but that's not a problem because they've registered it for completely different goods or services. So, do some of your own due diligence. If you do have concerns, then speak to an IP advisor, and then we can conduct a more detailed search to give you that reassurance that yes, that name is clear to use. And at that point, that's when we talk about filing trademark applications. I mean, filing a trademark application, if you're a UK only business, it's not an expensive process. It takes about 4 months. But it's something you can get on. If you've done the search, you have that security of knowing that you don't believe there are any conflicting rights out there. You can get your application filed, and then you can move on knowing you've done what you can with your IP.
Absolutely. So, I mean, you've kind of touched on it there. That it's pretty much relevant for any type of business, not just the ones that, like you said, are protecting brand names of counterfeit products and such like. So, who are and what are the type of clients that you generally work with?
Yeah, so it's a full range of sizes and a full range of sectors. That's what keeps it interesting and exciting. So we certainly do a lot of work with startup companies, and our business model is very much about being agile and adapting to the particular client and giving a bespoke service. So with the startup businesses, it's all about getting good practices in place for them, clearing their initial names and helping them understand what they might need in the future. So as their business adapts, when to come back and talk to us. With SMEs, it can be quite different. So we have manufacturing companies, people with business to consumer products. Obviously, they tend to have a multitude of brand names. So we work with a lot of companies like that, whether it's, it can be cosmetics. We do toy manufacturers. So there's quite a variety, and they might regularly produce brand names. So their needs are quite different. They might need regular searching of brand names. They might have seasonal brand names, in which case they might not want to secure registration because they're only going to use it for a short period. And then we move on to the large companies where we're dealing with in-house legal departments. And again, their needs can be quite different. The strategy is at a higher level, but their internal understanding is a lot better. And with them, often it's about helping them engage with their marketing departments, to make sure the intellectual property strategy they've got in place is implemented. So we've worked with large car manufacturers, large food producers. So there's quite a range across quite a lot of different industries.
Of course, yeah. Now, one thing that's obviously we're if for anyone watching this not live, that we're currently obviously in the global pandemic, and the world has changed massively for most people. But one big subject area that was that's dominated the live for the previous 2 years has been Brexit. Be interesting to know, because I know you do there's a lot of work that you do across the EU. How you kind of see that playing out in a post-Brexit world?
Yeah, it'd be very interesting because, as I briefly mentioned earlier, there is a European Union-wide trademark registration system, which the vast majority of our clients utilise. Initially they will register their brand across the EU because that has very much become the primary market for most businesses.
Yeah.
Now with Brexit, in terms of intellectual property, there are changes that your European Union trademark registration will no longer cover the UK. There are provisions in place, so no one's going to lose any rights. Their existing EU registrations are split into an EU registration and a UK registration. But it'll be very interesting to see how it diverges over time, because whilst currently most businesses register EU-wide, in the future some will register just UK. Other international businesses might register just in the EU rather than just the UK. So there is the potential to see more conflict in terms of different brands registered in the different territories. But also, it's primarily affected by how our clients behave, whether they will still continue to push into the EU, or will they be looking more to the US as a primary market. Now, the benefits of being in the single market have been lost to them. And all trademark rights are territorial. So having rights in the UK doesn't mean you're free to sell in the US. So, we'll probably see a more diverse range of brand clearance and brand registration into other territories.
Of course, yeah. Now, I've touched on it obviously before I asked this question, but obviously we're in a very challenging times at the moment for all businesses. How is, if at all, is the world of IP affected by what's going on at the moment?
Well, like everything, I think there's certainly an effect. In terms of how we work, we're fortunate we're set up for agile working, so there's no real changes there. It's a very deadline-based business when you're looking at running opposition proceedings, filing applications, and there's been delays there because the operation of the intellectual property offices. They've made plans, they're delaying deadlines. They're giving everyone the opportunity, if they are suffering from this, to that they're not going to lose out in their ongoing proceedings. But we're very much affected by client behaviour. So clients from all different industries are being affected in different ways, and that really has a knock-on effect for us. What we're doing is we're staying in touch with clients, understanding what the issues are for them, to see where we can help. Last week I spoke to a couple of clients, who probably couldn't be more different in how they're affected. One is a wallpaper manufacturer, and they're finding actually they've been really quite busy.
Yeah,
they've been sort of 90 to 100% of expected turnover, because everyone's stuck at home, finally get around to do that wallpapering they're supposed to do, and they can supply online, and so that's been quite good for them. Another client I've been speaking to is runs large scale sporting events, and of course they've been more or less entirely shut down, and it's a massive problem for them.
Yeah.
So we're seeing, what I'm trying to learn from businesses is how they're planning to deal with this, because there's a lot of short-term planning for getting through the initial lockdown. A lot of businesses are looking at, how they're going to adapt to the changing environment when we come out of lockdown, because a lot of people are thinking the world's not going to be the same as it was before. They're looking at how they're going to engage with clients, in the post-lockdown world, how they're going to adapt their service offerings. So we're talking with them about, does their current IP portfolio cover what they're planning to do? So again, it's all about adapting their current strategy to fit with the business. And that's something we also always advocate, not necessarily just for the challenging times we're in now, is periodically taking stock and saying, actually, is my IP portfolio supporting the way my business is going currently? So it's always good to reflect. It's just the current situation there's a lot more reflection going on.
Absolutely, and I guess it's quite unique circumstances, and obviously in a lot of ways is that it is a global thing. Now we're all we're all kind of at different stages around the world, and obviously we talked about Brexit earlier and the impact on that. It's a different situation, but actually once we get through this initial period, there probably actually is going to be some uniformity around the world. We're all going to have to adapt to a different way of working, and it's going to be interesting to see how businesses do apply that, because there probably is going to be a lot of similarities. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, I guess.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, we work internationally, so it's been quite interesting because we work for a number of clients in China who, of course, were hit first by this, but
Yep.
then also, were the first to have easing of restrictions. So, the way they've been working has been slightly different, and I think the way we've all communicated with each other is. There's obviously been less emphasis on face to face, and that's helped break down barriers, which I think has been a good thing.
Absolutely. I know you mentioned there about kind of working with businesses around the world. I mean, as you know, for me, one of my big areas is collaboration. So what types of businesses would you maybe work, or types of people do you work with from a collaborative point of view?
So one type of business in particular that we do work with, and I've always been keen to collaborate with more, is brand creation agencies and the creative agencies. Because if we go back to the start of this interview, some of the common problems is not doing the right due diligence at the very start of the process. It's not uncommon for us to, with big organizations, they come to us, this is the brand name we want to protect, and we find out there are serious issues with it. And then we learn that they've actually spent a significant amount of money working with branding agencies. They've been working on this project for 3 months, so a huge amount of time and effort's gone into it. And then we're doing the legal check and finding out, well, there's some serious problems here. Whereas, clearly it's more productive if that legal check is done at a much earlier stage, and then we can focus the time and effort they're spending onto something that we know can go somewhere. So engaging with branding agencies, which we've already done with the Northern Affinity, a lot of it's education. So, the branding agencies can understand what the difficulties are, obviously introducing us to clients, that's great, and we can do the same for them. So that's very good. But also working with law firms where they don't have their own specialist intellectual property offering. It is quite a niche industry. So once you get down from the very large law firms, a lot of legal businesses don't have that kind of offering. So, being able to partner with them and offer that has been very useful as well.
No, makes sense. Thank you, Matt. And then just finally for me, if people want to get in contact with you and find out a bit more about what you do and maybe ask a question or two, what's the best ways of getting a hold of you?
Yeah, so all our contact information is on the website, so it's sonderip.com. So you can just drop us an email from there. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Twitter. as I mentioned previously, education's a big part of IP. So we like to put out knowledge pieces and help people understand the processes and what's involved in developing a strategy and protecting their business. So, please do engage with us and drop us a line. We're always happy to discuss any issues you might have or questions you've got.
Absolutely, and obviously, if you can't get hold of Matt's contact details for whatever reason, do let us know at Northern Affinity. We obviously have all those details, and I'm sure more than happy to pass them on as well. So, thank you very much for your time, Matt. It's been really interesting. I think it's an area for a lot of people that don't know much about, so to kind of get an overview of it's a really important thing for a lot of business people. So, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, cheers. Bye.